He gave him a question. He said, is al-hammam halal or haram? And the Sheikh was very upset, and he just left. You know? In this mosque, we are different nationality here. You know, I'm Algerian. There is brothers from Jamaica, different nationality, different ID. In Algeria, we don't have this problem. We are all 80% we are Maliki. You know. Arrived to this country, you know, you've got different brothers from different madhahib, you know. But what I want to ask you is, I can see groups there, you know, talking about wudu all the time, you know. A group there, tafsir, you know, a group there. What can we do to this deen here in this country? What can we do? I've read a book about Hassan al-Banna, rahimahullah, and how we organize his group. What can we do here in this country?
In this mosque, at least.
To start start from here, inshallah. Yeah, Sheikh, anyone.
Sheikh, quick.
Well, this.
No. What we want to say, we begin from here. This is the station, so we start from here.
You know, I think that
he's the one who understands what goes on here.
Yeah.
So he's the one who
to answer. Then give him the mic.
Well, you know, I think generally there's a problem, you know, in the ummah, in the sense that we have numbers, we have history, we have wealth, we have many things. But, you know, to really, you know, begin a revival of Islam, we need a complete ihya, you know, to put life back into the deen. You know, and it all begins inside of ourselves. Because the Prophet ﷺ is saying, you know, in the fil jasadi mudra, إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّ. That there is a lump of flesh, if it is sound, the whole body is sound. وَإِذَا فَسَدَ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. If it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. That is the heart. So our intentions, our hearts, you know, what is inside of us. This is a crucial thing now. And there are some serious issues we have. Diseases of the heart, like pride, hasad, jealousy,
hatred,
right? Ghadab, this kathat of ghadab, we get angry and over emotional, right? And so these things, this shuh, this greed, these things, you know, we have to look inside of ourselves and really start to do things to humble ourselves. With pride, for instance, you know, when scholars look at this, you know, the first thing we have to think about is pride in the sense of, you know, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That really we come from a humble place and we will return to a humble place. And if we look at our lives and we look at what happens to us as we get older, why are we proud? You see? But secondly, they say if we can't be humble, you know, from our understanding, then do something to humble yourself. Because if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, you will see, even though he's receiving revelation from above 7 heavens, you know, he builds the masjid, he helps to build himself, carrying rocks. And, you know, some friends of mine went to India once, and they were visiting a scholar of hadith. And they came into the house, and they sat down, and an elderly man came out, and, you know, he gave them water, and they washed their hands, and then he brought food, and they ate their food. And then they said, okay, we're finished. Where's the sheikh? 10 minutes later, the same man came out and sat down. He said, I'm the sheikh. So you see what he did? If he had any pride inside of himself, he killed it inside of him. Because he was their slave. Right? He served them. And then he took his position. Of course, when he started to talk about hadith, he was above them. You know, but the pride, you know, has to be dealt with. And that means that, you know, in simple building things, building the masjids, you know, being, you know, simple efforts. We all have to be involved in these, you know, type of efforts. So the ihya, the tajdeed begins inside of ourselves. From there, it should start to affect our character. We have to put more emphasis on character. For a long time, we put our emphasis on ibadat. And we teach the children, you know, how to make wudu, how to make salah, you know, and you'll see many people, as you say, they sit around and they study these issues of ibadah, and they learn how to argue with each other, you know, and to debate one over the other and argue. But now, the character. The Prophet ﷺ said, you know, in the riwayah in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, he said, بُعِثْتَ لِأُتَمِّمَ حُسْنَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent to complete the best in character. So it's not just to make salat. Why do we make salat? These are some of the questions. What is coming out of this? You see, so we have to put just as much emphasis on the rituals of Islam than we do on the character. You know, what are we doing with the rituals? If we learn aqeedah, how do we implement this aqeedah? If we learn fiqh, what are we doing? A person fasts, you know, and if you ask this brother, you know, break your fast at 5:27, and he looked at the prayer chart and it said no, at 5:30. If you try to give him some water, he'll fight you. Alhamdulillah, he doesn't want to do that. But then he breaks his fast, and then he starts backbiting the imam, scandalizing somebody else. You know, and not realize that ritual he did, you know, backbiting somebody, scandalizing somebody, cursing someone is as bad, you know, as breaking the fast. As the Prophet ﷺ said, La yadkhul jannah namam, that the one who carries namima, you know, that this serious, you know, scandal on a person will not enter paradise. So the character, it should, you know, our characters, we need to emphasize this as much as we emphasize wearing the clothes and making the salat on time. Then this should affect our mu'amalat. You know, the interpersonal relationships have to start to change. So you know, it's not just what I do in the masjid. When I leave the masjid, if I have a shop, you know, do I raise the price? Do I make salat in the masjid and then sell alcohol in my shop? Right? You know, the contradiction. So what do we do in our business dealings, in our family dealings? Right? It's got to, you know, reach this level too. And these are some things we can all start to work on ourselves. Right? We can start to look at ourselves, you know, criticize, you know, what we did last year. We're entering a new Islamic year. Right? You know, look, what is my character like now? What am I doing, you know, with my family? You can gauge a community, you know, really where it's going. If you look at the condition of the sisters. If the women are oppressed, if the families are breaking up, if divorce is rampant, right, then the community got a serious problem, man. We have to have healthy families, stable society, you know, stable relationship with the children. And we can work on all of this now. But we have to be humble, man. This takabbur, this arrogance and pride, we have to take it out of our heart. We think because I am a man, or because I am tall, or I am strong, I have power over you, right? This has got to come out of our heart. The Prophet ﷺ, you know, was a humble person, man. People used to come to Medina looking for him, and they would be shaking, trembling. And when they met him, they didn't want to leave him. Right? They see a halaqah of now, they say, where? You know, they look at the halaqah and say, which one of you is Rasulullah? They couldn't tell by just looking. When he started talking, then they knew. So this humility in ourselves, right? Focusing on our intentions, our character, our interpersonal, you know, relationships, our dealings, then we can bring alive the rituals. If we remain on these rituals and argue about these little points, right, forgetting the character, right, then we will, you know, argue to the day of judgment. This is where the Yahud, you know, went astray with their Pharisees arguing over the rituals. They lost, you know, the spirit, you know, of their deen. You know, and we don't want to fall in that, especially now in this very critical time, where there are many youth who are going astray. They're leaving the deen. So we have to think about alternatives, right, for the youth. What are we going to do with the youth in this masjid? What are we going to do in the community? We have to start seriously thinking about practical solutions, right, you know, to our problems. And then, you know, we move gradually in our knowledge so we understand, you know, the religion itself. Strong jama'ah, right? And, you know, we need to, like, our relationship with each other has got to change. right? It's really important now.
Let me just, once you mentioned the madahib, let me chip in with a point in relation to the madahib. Abu Hanifa, madhab Hanafi, Malik, Malikiya, Shafi'i, Shafi'iyya, then Ahmad bin Hanbal, Hanbaliyya. In the first place, all of them did not live in the same city at the same time. If you follow the writings of these great scholars, you realize that Abu Hanifa falls short in terms of hadith. Of all the madahib, Abu Hanifa, not that he did not have access to hadith, but because in his area were a lot of Khawarij, Shia, who were concocting lies that the Prophet ﷺ said this, said this. So he was very particular in the use of hadith. So he relied more on qiyas, the use of analogy. If you come to Imam Malik, he stayed in Medina, very lucky. He had access to a lot of hadith. That all the three Imams, they had access to a lot of hadith. But when Imam Malik met Abu Hanifa in Medina, listen to his comments about the great man. He said, if you had a rock in your hand, Abu Hanifa would be able to argue his case out for you to be convinced that it is a diamond in your hand. Indicating the extent of the person's intelligence. What I want to say is that they had respect for one another. Just like the Sahaba, they respected each other, they recognized the talents each one had. And that is what we don't have today. As our scholar indicated, we undermine each other. Let's note that Ibn Abbas, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of the death of the Prophet, he was 13 years. And Abu Bakr ruled for 2 years. But the young boy was loved so much by Umar ibn Khattab. But the young man, as a kid, enjoyed the prayer of the Prophet. The Prophet prayed for him, Allahumma faqihu fi din wa allimhu ta'wil. Oh Allah, let this small boy understand the religion, wa allimhu ta'wil, and let him know the commentary, the interpretation of the Quranic verses. And in another narration, he said, Allahumma atihil hikmah. Oh Allah, give him wisdom. And indeed, he was blessed with abundant wisdom. And Omar knew it. So anytime Omar was going for the Council of Elders meeting, those with long beard, 80 years, 70 years, 65, he would take the small boy 15 with him. And some of them started protesting that we also have small kids in our homes. Then Omar said, I want you to know his status. I want you to know who he is. Then on one occasion, Omar read, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. And then Omar asked the Council of Elders, what do you think to that? These verses, what do they mean? And they said, we are Arabs. We understand it the way you understand it. Clear language. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ up to the end. Literal understanding. Then he turned to the young boy at 15. He said, well, my position is different from those old people. Then they started to set up, well, bomb is coming. Real intelligence and wisdom at work. He said, listen to the verses very well. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ. When the help and the victory of Allah come, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, and you see people entering into the religion of Allah in groups. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرُهُ. Then glorify the name of your Lord and ask Him for forgiveness. إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Because He is oft forgiven. Then Ibn Abbas said, every prophet was sent with a time frame within which he had to invite people to the way of Allah. So if people had agreed, accepted his message, and are entering into the religion in groups, it means he had accomplished his mission and had to go back to his Lord. So that chapter was revealed to the Prophet as a signal to the Prophet that he would have to pack his bag and baggage and go back to the Almighty. And people, 80 years, 70, their minds never got to this point. So we don't have to look down upon any human being. And as our scholar rightly indicated, when we're dealing with one another, we have to take into consideration the fact that he is a Muslim, number one. This should be the overriding thinking. Because there is a Quran that says, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. That nobody should claim purity, that you are more God-fearing. It is only Allah who knows those who fear Him. But once we meet here as brothers, if you from your village, you are Hanafi, you from Bangladesh, Shafi, from this place, East Africa, Somalia, Shafi, Algeria, Maliki, West Africa, Maliki, from Saudi Arabia, Hanbali, yeah, we are all one. This should be the principle. We don't have to allow this madhahib, because these madhahib, if they had all lived at one place, we will find all of them under one banner of Islam.
Brother, assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah. My question is following the revival and the unity that you already talked about. And we know that we don't have, as a Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, what they call Aqidah division. These things is only a furu', and as we need this revival and unity, it is clear that we don't have less ulama today. We have many ulama all over the world who well educated and understand this issue. But I think the problem is how can we do revival and unity while those ulama who understand the issue, who give lectures and have written a lot of books and spend time and effort to this issue, are not, I'm not saying they are not united, but they are not working together. So while the ulama are not working together, how can we work out to do survive and unity? That's my challenge.
Yeah,
Well, what we have to realize is that leadership does not come from outer space. It grows out of the ummah itself. And you know, we are coming out of this colonial period, you know, where the people who were sent to the universities, generally to the Islamic universities, were not the cream of our crop, especially you see in the 20th century. Because back in the 20th century, under colonial rule, you know, and you see it even people coming here, where, you know, they want their son to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or an accountant, you know, or some engineer, muhandis. You know, and if the boy has a little bit of problems, he's a little ifrit, you know, they say, okay, send him to the Quran school. Send him to the madrasa. And the madrasas got cut off. You know, and now that we're making this transition, we expect out of the madrasas, you know, leadership that has understanding of the dunya, understanding of the deen, all of these things. This is going to take some time. That this will take some time to develop the type of, you know, Islamic leadership, you know, that has the knowledge, a solid foundation in the deen, and also an understanding of the dunya, of the world itself. So this is a process that we're going to have to go through. Because I found myself really, you know, this issue of, you know, the other one, you know, he mentioned the halal and the hilal, right? These are two big divisive issues in the community. And we gathered together, we had all the different jamaats. In Toronto, we formed a hilal committee, We had, ikhtilaf al-matali', one matla, we had calculation, everything. And we started the month together. And then as the month went on, they started changing. And by the end of the month, people were in different camps. And instead of having 2 Eids, we had 3. So, but I realized the difference was not the fiqh. It was not ikhtilaf al-matali'. It was ikhtilaf al-qulub. It was a difference of the hearts. So it really is going to come back to this again. And if the scholars, are dividing us up, they have to be called to account. They have to be called to account by the Jama'ah. Because if we do not, call our leaders to account, then we will suffer. They have to be questioned, why are you doing this? Right? And if you go to the text, you'll see the Sahaba had total different understanding. Jarir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anh, he says in one tradition, Bayatu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ala iqam as-salat wa ita' az-zakat wa nus li kulli Muslim. So he said he took this pledge to establish prayers, establish zakat, and to give sincere advice and support to every Muslim. Li kulli Muslim. Right? So these names of different groups and whatever these things, you can start mentioning these names until you go crazy. But the leaders now who are bringing us together have to be supported. The people who are breaking us into little groups have to be called to account. Because we're in a different time framework now. Our people are on the streets, man. They're on the streets. We're in crisis now. So the leaders have to be called to account. Otherwise, we will continue to be led astray, by people, and I found many times, with all respects to many of the scholars, not all the scholars, I found when I got amongst the, some of the ulama, one's a big name, whatever, we with these brothers, they were just afraid, man. They were afraid to go to the public. They didn't have the training, to deal with like non-Muslims or to deal with differences. So they just made a fatwa so they can stay in their corner. Because they're afraid to go out there. Because they didn't have this training, man. So we're going to have to, equip our younger generation, with a solid foundation in the deen, also understanding of the world, right? Empower people, empower, this generation towards this, an understanding where leadership can come from out of us. We have developed Al-Maghrib Institute. We have developed an intensive institute that goes all around to different places, to give people who cannot go to the Middle East, or to India or wherever, give them an intensive, understanding of the different Islamic studies, to open up the door for them, and then to help them into, studying in different parts of the world. So there are new institutes that are developing in this part of the world, to try to equip people, here with good tools, right, and also help them understand the world, so this new generation of leadership can come. It's a process that we're going through, but the leaders will have to be called to account.
Sheikh Nuamah, do we need to add?
Yeah, what I would like to add has to do with the kind of educational systems that groom us, in the Arab world in particular, and groomed some of us, and groomed a lot of the scholars who are operating in America, Canada, and in the first place, the caliber of people they admitted into those schools were not the right caliber of people who were supposed to enjoy those scholarships. For example, in Ghana, we have 2 educational systems. We have the normal educational system, where you go through kindergarten, primary 1, all the way to the university, right, in Ghana. Then we have the pure Arabic system, which doesn't have any room for English teaching. So they produce students as if they are studying all their life in Egypt. They can only speak Arabic. Such schools produce not less than 600 students SS level every year, Arabic. None of them can speak English. So they are waiting for scholarships from the Arab world. And you know, these days, the scholarships are difficult to come by. So maybe Kuwait will give about 5, Qatar 2, Emirat 3, Saudi Arabia 10, total maybe 50 scholarships and 600 students. So if the 50 enjoy the scholarship for this year, the 550, what do we do with them? And even the 50 who move out there to go to Medina University, Imam Muhammad bin Saud, Al-Qura, Qatar University, and all those places, because they did not go through the normal educational system, which is recognized by the state, they don't understand the system. And when they graduate and come, they can't fit into the system. 20 years ago, I had the opportunity of meeting the Deputy Minister of Islamic Affairs in Riyadh, currently. And I told him that the scholarships should be directed to the students who went through the normal educational system and have English background. So that when they go to Medina, they go to Shu'batul Lugha. They go to study Arabic language for 2 years and then join the college. When the person comes back, he has both systems of education and can operate effectively. So back in Ghana, the most active du'a are those who have the 2 disciplines. Because they understand modern trends. There are some scholars, when you mention globalization, he might think that he's living on Mars, you know. It's never come across the word before. If we talk about no social networks, they don't know. So one of the key problems in the Ummah is that we don't have scholars who are up to the task. The field of psychology, which our son is studying, is a very important area for da'wah. You need to understand the condition of people before you can penetrate into their hearts. 3 people came to the Prophet. They all asked the same question, and he gave 3 different answers. A woman came and asked, Ma huwa al-jihad? What is jihad? If you were to answer, you say, oh, go and take some sword and gun and go and fight. He told the woman, al-jihad huwa hajj mabrur. That jihad is to perform hajj, an accepted hajj. Then an old man with a stick who could not work well also asked the Prophet, Ma huwa al-jihad? The Prophet looked at him and said, al-jihad huwa dhikrullah. The jihad is the remembrance of Allah. And then a young man with youthful exuberance came to the Prophet, asked the same question. Then the Prophet said, al-jihad an tujahida bimalik wa nafsik. The jihad is for you to spread the word of Allah and fight in the way of Allah with yourself and your wealth. Why the differences in that, in the answers to the question? The same question. He looked at the condition of each individual. Well, the woman, the most strenuous work she can do is to perform Hajj. An old man who is physically incapacitated, the best the old man can do is to sit down and do Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah bihamdi, Subhanallah al-azim, Subhanallah bihamdi. After that one, he can easily do it. But a young man with youthful experience, put him on the ground to do physical work for the ummah. So we need to understand the psychology of people. So the field of psychology is important, except that they have put into this so much filth. So you need pure Islamic knowledge to filter it out and take the benefit that is in it. So, as he rightly indicated, we need to understand the situation in which we are, and the scholars should constantly learn. Scholars should give themselves the opportunity, avail themselves for retraining from time to time. And I think that when a community is so overwhelmed with problems, look at what every small community can do for itself. Because if you think beyond your box, sometimes you'll be so overwhelmed that you can't even, you realize that the big problem cannot be solved by you. So you become confused. So, but look at a Nur Center. What can we do here? As we pray for our brothers out there, what can we do to do the revivalism? Let's start here. And when we are addressing further, the individual levels, we say, what can each one of us do in his individual home with his wife and children? And when each efforts are brought together, they conglomerate to give us that revivalism we are all talking about.
I would like to add to that, we have a misconception in the Islamic world. I wouldn't say just in the Muslim West that somehow leadership is only found among the scholars. That is a big, big problem, because there are other scholars out there who are not capable leaders. It's really a rare treasure. You find a man who is a scholar and also a leader. This is something that we have to ponder upon. Because sometimes you take a young guy, 17 years old, and you send him to study, who have no experience in life, never had a wife, never had kids, don't know what it is to balance a budget, don't know anything about anything. And then he produces fatwa that affects people and affects families and affects life. So we need to, look at this issue from all aspects. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that two things, Islam will remain healthy, unless and until two things are healthy: the scholars and the leaders. So we have to think about this, inshallah.
One suggestion, and this came out of a discussion that we had last week in Houston, Texas, and this was, concerning, brothers who are coming back, from Medina and different places into the community. I think it's important for the community itself, to choose, those who are best equipped, and work with them here, and then they go overseas to study, and then they come back into a community. So this person has a plan. There's a plan for the person. He's supported while he's over there, right? The community understands that person, and then when the person comes back, he fits, into the machinery of the community. Instead of just coming back and walking down the street, from Saudi, and there he is back in London. He's confused. And many times they need to go through a decompression chamber. It's almost like an astronaut that comes from outer space and then comes back on Earth. He can't just come out of the spaceship and walk on Earth. He has to decompress, or else his body will explode. So similarly, if the community is backing, the students, if they choose somebody who has capability, right? He's a solid person, right? And then that person comes back and he can get a job, an income. He's respected. Whatever, he can take some extra courses to get a skill, to provide for himself. Then that person can become a more valuable, useful person in the community, as opposed to a problem for the community. So we have to think long term, in terms of ways for brothers, and young sisters to be educated, for the future, because they are the ones who have to lead, in this 21st century, in these major confusions, that are going on.
And then I'd also like to add that, as he's making a strong case for our brothers, that we have to send out there for them to come back to support the dawah work. I want to state that we are living in the age of professionalism. The age of professionalism. The global order respects professionals more than anyone else. And I'm saying this because we have done an experiment with doctors and some engineers back home. We trained them during the holidays, short break, 3 months. We gathered them in one of the universities to give them training. Some of them are now du'at, even though they are engineers and doctors. They go out there over the weekends and do dawah work. We carry across the country some caravans with them, And it's one of the most potent means of reviving this religion. Because every individual should transform himself. The other time when I was here, I said it. Every Muslim should transform himself to be a da'iyah. And we have also observed that when you are a professional and you become a da'iyah, you become more vibrant because you don't rely on anybody for salary in respect of the job you're doing for Allah. You have your income, all right. You have your money, you have your resources. All that you need to do is to concentrate on the job in disseminating the word of Allah. When it comes to contribution, you don't have to wait for money from the Arab world. Because the money is everywhere. It's dropped everywhere by Allah. In terms of resources to do Allah's work, we don't have to wait now for money from anywhere. Let's generate the few pounds sterling, the pences and whatever that we are picking on a daily basis. Inshallah, the work will be done. We need to carry with us a spirit, strong spirit of tenacity, of purpose and action. And inshallah, the sky will be our limit. And as Khalid was praying for himself to be granted Firdaus, he was very selfish, in quotes. We pray for all of you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings all of us together in Jannatul Firdaus.
Okay, we have a last question here because we have to end at 9, inshallah. Not the last question. If we have time, we'll take any others, but we'll just finish up this as somebody sent this question. Some say the head covering is an Arab or a cultural tradition, not a direct order from Allah. And there is no statement in the Quran saying to cover your head, your ears, neck, etc. Can you clear up this issue, as I have shown the 2 places in the Quran, i.e. Surah Ahzab and Surah Nur, telling the woman to cover from head to toe, showing only face and hands. So this seems like a sister passed this question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Take it.
Inshallah.
Please, the issue of hijab. Anyone who mentions hijab as an Arab culture doesn't know the dichotomy between what comes from Allah and what is practiced by the Arabs. We shouldn't forget, there were prostitutes, Arab prostitutes in Mecca. And they used to be called qayyinat. They were going out naked, as some people, women are going out naked today. Covering of the body was not totally done by Arabs. It was Islam that introduced it. The Arabs, some of them, women were going out naked. As I said earlier, some were half naked, fully naked, quarter naked. So dressing fully has never, in the history of the Arabs, been their dress. For us today to say that it was an Arab culture. But in Quran chapter 33 and Quran 24, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word jilbab. And then khumr. When you bring these 2 words together, some scholars consider the khumr to cover the face all the way down, including the 2 hands and all the feet and whatever. But hadith of Asma, the Prophet was with Aisha and the sister entered. She had then had her menses, meaning she had become a woman. And the Prophet said, even though some scholars consider it to be a weak hadith, but it has also been authenticated by others. The Prophet is reported to have said, ordered Asma, that if a girl becomes of age, she has to cover the whole body except the 2 hands and the face. And even the 4 Imams, Ahmad bin Hanbal calls for the covering of the face. Shafi'i calls for the covering of the face. Malik and Abu Hanifa are soft on it, but they say if the woman is beautiful, she should cover. When she is beautiful, creating trouble for the young people, they can't close their eyes. Then she has to cover. These are divine instructions. It's not a joke. So the noise they're making, because you see, let me tell you one thing. The hijab of the Muslim woman, there are 2 arguments in favor of the hijab of the Muslim woman. The argument of civility and the argument of value. During prehistoric times, Stone Age times, Man was going out naked. And historians tagged him uncivilized because he was going out naked. Unfortunately, today, when you go out naked, you're considered civilized. That's a paradox. Very difficult to understand. When man invented clothing and started to cover himself, they said, historians, they said, oh, man is now civilized because he started to cover his privacy. If civility relating to covering of the body is the yardstick for measuring the civility of a human being, the Muslim woman is number one on the surface of the earth. Then the argument of value. Anything that you cherish so much, you hide it. You don't put on the street for people to play with it. So the Muslim woman is a treasure. It's a jewel. That is why our women are more beautiful. Yes. We don't go for beauty contests. It's haram. But we have the beautiful women in this world. In terms of the body, in terms of everything, because they cover to maintain the freshness of their bodies. That is the fact. The truth.
Subhanallah.
So they are well preserved, well protected, and it gives them dignity. There is a secondary school in Ghana run by Muslims. And even some of the Christians who attend the school, their parents insist they should cover because it's a way of protecting them. When prying eyes are like wolves, looking left and right and committing all sort of filth, then with hijab, you are safe. It's not an Arab culture, it's a divine injunction. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock, and I would like to